Welcome back, everyone. We have hit fact number 30 out of 35. It's been a big old troll that we've got to get here, but we are here and we are loving it. We've got very exciting guests coming up. Before we bring him in, just to remind you why we're here, we're raising money for Comic Relief. It's their 35th year of being in existence, and we wanted to celebrate that by doing 35 facts, talking to 35 different people for 35 minutes each. And as we get into this next chat, I'm just too excited for our next guest. Basically, this person has delivered the best comedy on TV that you've seen for the last 2 decades. It's everything from Avenue 5 to Veep, the thick of it. We have Alan Partridge, thanks to him. We have movies like The Death of Stalin, In the Loop. I mean, this guy is just the comedy genius of our time. Please welcome Armando Iannucci.
Woo! Hello. I now feel under a ridiculous amount of pressure.
I know. Yeah, I should have done that.
Feel it.
Good, especially since you're so kind of upbeat. I thought you'd. I actually woke earlier this morning worried that you might, by the time I came on, you'd have ran out of things to say.
Oh, no, never.
Clearly not. No.
And don't feel the pressure, because I have to say that introduction Dan just gave you was verbatim the introduction he gave John Lloyd.
That's not true. That's not true.
Who is the king of comedy?
That is not true. John was as a producer, the godfather of production. Armando is as a character creator, as a performer, as a writer. These are very separate things.
Is it only Mark Watson who was a god, or was there any other god?
He was a god of spoken word marathons.
Did you interrupt him last night while he was in the middle of another sort of 20-hour thing that he just like link up?
Yeah. He's always on something.
Look, the day-to-day, I mean, I keep listening. There's nothing shit in here. I was even trying to look for something terrible. There's nothing. It's just pure gold. Anyway, Armando, thank you so much for joining us.
Is that from Wikipedia, though? I mean, I go in there and take out all.
Oh, you curate that, do you? Okay. So we're going to kick into it. Fact number 30. And it's from Armando.
Okay, and my fact is, in Milton's Paradise Lost, tremendous 17th century poem about good and evil, heaven and hell, Milton spends 5 lines describing angels farting. Shall I read it?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, so this is the angel Gabriel, I think it is, explaining to Adam and Eve what the angels are like in heaven. And he's explaining that we're a little bit like you, but different. And at one point he says, and food alike, those pure intelligent... Nah, it's so early in the morning. And food alike, those pure intelligential substances require, as doth your rational. And both contain within them every lower faculty of sense, whereby they hear, see, smell, touch, taste, tasting concoct, digest, assimilate, and corporeal to incorporeal turn. That's a fart. Corporeal to incorporeal. That's you turning substance to gas.
It's the most beautiful fart description anyone's ever written.
Yeah. I think so. I think I'd like it on a tombstone somewhere.
Wow. Did you study Milton?
I did for 3 years. Well,
okay. So you thought you were under pressure before. You're definitely under pressure now.
What, you're going to ask me Milton questions?
Oh yeah.
I did. That's when I did mostly comedy, and I'll tell you the point I decided I'm not taking this seriously was when I discovered that the opening lines to Paradise Lost of Man's First Disobedience and the Fruit of That Forbidden Tree have the same rhythm scheme to the theme tune to the Flintstones. It's of Man's First Disobedience and the Fruit of That Forbidden Tree, and that's the point where I thought, okay.
Has someone ever sung the whole of Paradise Lost to the tune of the Flintstones?
Next Comic Relief, it has.
Next Comic Relief, yeah. 20 hours. Oh, that's so good.
And animated as well, so it's all these kind of hell and plus Barney and whatever. Fred.
That's your next genius creation. That's one of the ones that you have to delete off Wikipedia in 3 years.
Total shit.
It's an incredible poem. It's maybe the greatest, but it's not the most read poem.
No,
these
it's not,
days.
but it is unbelievable. And of course, everyone, and it's true, Satan is the best bit in it, because every time Satan comes on, because everyone loves, people love when Darth Vader comes on. People love the evil villain. And Satan is the evil, but he's also very mesmerizing in it. You actually are lulled into thinking, actually, he's got a point. Because Milton was a Puritan and a supporter of Cromwell, but it was after Cromwell had died and the monarchy was back. So his instincts were very Republican. And it's Satan in the poem who is saying, God is just some kind of like king, kind of ordering us about what to do, and we should be individuals. So there's Milton actually kind of, putting all his energy and passion into Satan.
Yeah.
I thought I'd start the Saturday morning with a sort of supporting Satanism. Really.
Yeah.
Just to give comic relief that controversial term.
Just £5 can draw a pentagram.
He is an amazingly attractive character. And I do think Paradise Lost maybe is not read outside of being studied, but I guess three of us here have lucky enough to study it, and it is stunning. But like when I did it for A-level, we all came away fancying the pants off him. We only did books 1 and 2 because they're the good ones, because they're set in hell.
They are really good. Yeah.
So sorry, who, Satan or Milton?
Satan.
Right.
He's so, he's evil, but he's so inspiring. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven.
Yeah.
All these phrases that I remember, 17 years later after 20 years no sleep.
Who is he like, if you would say a sort of movie description of like, what's his kind of cool character that's coming out?
Or like one of the Flintstones, which of...
He's more of a Barney.
Who's a great anti-hero?
Gary Oldman's character in Leon, Dan.
Okay.
But it's
I'll watch
interesting that the villains are like Sauron, and you just want to go to the place in the story where you're going to meet the bad guy.
Yeah, right.
So much personality. It is wonderful. But this was not the first poem that Milton planned to put Satan in as a character, which
really?
I didn't know before reading.
Oh my God! Was he
this.
planning a Satan universe then? Was it?
Satan cinematic universe. So it was. He started. I mean, he was clearly a great prodigy, because his first attempt at an epic poem started when he was 14 years old. He was going to write an epic poem about the gunpowder plot, which came 3 years before he was born. He was born in 1608.
Yeah.
So it was a couple of decades later. And it features Satan in it, his plan for this poem, suggesting the gunpowder plot to the Pope, who then brings up Guy Fawkes and says, we're getting a crew together. And that was his first attempt at putting Satan.
Milton himself, when Cromwell was the Lord Protector, Milton served as, his job description was Secretary of Tongues. And what that basically was Chief Communications Director. So Milton's job was to write in Latin to all the other kind of royal families of Europe, trying to justify why what they'd done in England, beheading Charles I, was correct. So he was sort of Cromwell's spin doctor.
Yeah, he was Alistair Campbell.
He was Alistair. Yes, he
Right.
The Malcolm Tucker.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, there is an element of Malcolm Tucker in, because Malcolm sort of, you see, Milton gets Satan to wind people in by just his rhetoric, twisting words. And was that the one you mentioned, Anna? You called
in fact, the best is the close to either book 1 or 2, where because he's trying to convince them to rise up against God, and it's awake, arise, or be forever fallen.
Yeah.
There's also better to reign in hell than serve in heaven.
That's right. And he says, evil be thou my good, which doesn't make any sense, but sort of does. It sounds good when you hear it,
Right.
So he twists words and language. So basically, I'm saying Alistair Campbell is satanic. I'm saying Dominic Cummings, clearly Satan, clearly.
Satanic but sexy, we're calling these people.
Not Dominic Cummings.
So there's quite a lot of farty bits in this, as well as the one that you read. Is there more?
Really?
Well,
sorry, that was a question.
I haven't gone through it, sort of annotating each kind of bodily functions. There is a mention of embryos and idiots. That's another great phrase. He does this parade. He just comes up with pandemonium is a word that he came up with for, and he came up with for this poem.
Right.
Yeah.
I always wonder when people come up with new words like that, pandemonium. Is it, you're reading this poem, you see this word, and you're like, what the fuck
What
is
does that
that?
mean? Yeah.
And you can't Google it. You can't read it anywhere else. You can't submit it to a dictionary before you publish the thing. So what happened? Were there notes that came with it going?
Shakespeare did that. Milton and Dickens did that a lot. Yeah. So when Dickens comes up with a new word, does it sound to everyone like because they just have they can't kind of process it.
I guess people must have had the skill of, pandemonium or demons. They must have had enough Latin if they were reading this that they could kind of work their way through
and also they only really work if it's a new word, but you could see what they've done. Do you know what I mean? It sort of makes sense. It's just never been expressed like that before.
Yeah, so they say that Milton did more words in the English language than anyone, right? According to the OED, he did 630-ish. Yeah. Shakespeare, something like 220, 230, something like that.
Wikipedia is one of his.
Wikipedia, yeah. Well, you see, people knew that because they knew that wiki was a way of
toothpaste.
Yeah, exactly. But it is all that, isn't it? He came up with unhealthily. Now, people will have known, presumably, what health was.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just like, and sometimes, of course, it's just the first example we have.
That's just bending the rules, isn't it? Unhealthily. That's just like stretching. That's just that's a Scrabble ploy.
I've invented the word unhealthiliest. Okay.
Yes.
So
well, does that mean you can
basically
get
Milton.
Unhealthiest.
Yeah.
And then unhealthiestness. No, never mind.
But it pretty much depends. The people who were putting the dictionary together, obviously English graduates like you guys, and so read a lot of Milton, and this is where they found a lot of their words.
Yeah, definitely. They didn't bother combing through every previous work for the word damp, which is also one that's credited to Milton.
Really? Damp?
Yeah.
See, no, that proves down. What do people make of damp?
Damp is a hard one to just get.
You've got nothing to kind of refer to then.
Yeah.
Goosery. He invented goosery.
Goosery.
And I don't know where goosery comes up in Paradise Lost because it doesn't feel like it's very full of goosery.
And what is goosery?
I think it's foolishness, isn't it?
Oh, right.
I thought you meant a goose pen when you said that. It sounds like a piggery.
No, maybe he did mean that actually because I haven't seen it in context. Many goose pens in.
There's one in heaven, probably, and not one in hell.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure God has a goosery.
So careful with that one, wouldn't you? Because that could go, as we've both just seen, all of us seen, two ways, right?
Yeah.
The context of that being placed into a sentence is like, all right, either I'm suddenly out of nowhere telling everyone that he has a goose pen.
Or he's being a bit
maybe he invented it as a pun because it was someone messing around in a goose pen.
Yeah.
Turn two together.
That was his son.
Yeah.
Who he brought up. Jesus had to just for the first 10 years in heaven just look after the geese.
They skip over that bit, don't they? In the Bible,
they do. Yeah.
They fast track to the 20s.
That's right. Yeah, that's not his Wikipedia, is it?
Yeah. Was Milton big in his time? Was he seen as a huge player within the world of literature?
Well, I think he was more well known, publicly for his work with Cromwell, and as a kind of slightly obscure poet, because he sort of bowed out. To write Paradise Lost took him a long time, so clearly while he was writing it, not much else was appearing. And he wrote it. There was the plague was in London. He got out of London to Chalfont St Giles, where you can still go around Milton's cottage where he composed.
Wow!
Cool. So I think actually he was seen, and he was also seen as a bit of a kind of odd, kind of eccentric. From an early age, like you said, Andy, he kind of saw himself as Britain's next greatest poet after Shakespeare. That's what his job's description was. If he'd had a passport, he would have put that down in his occupation. But I think he was seen by a lot of people as being just a little bit odd.
Yeah.
But he was very revolutionary. He wrote pamphlets on freedom of speech. He wrote pamphlets on the right for people to divorce. And he was very, very.
Well, he was married 3 times, so there was a little bit of personal interest.
Yeah.
But
I think his first 2 wives died, didn't they?
Yes.
Rather than divorced. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought really. I thought he left his first wife. I mean, okay,
his first wife died.
She copped it.
There's no.
In fact, there's a very sad sonnet he wrote about not being able to see his first wife, and then he went blind. That's the other thing. He went.
Yeah. So I read this. This is just like an old QI fact, and that is that he dictated a lot of Paradise Lost, and whenever his assistant was late, he would shout out, "I want to be milked." Does that sound right? I don't know if that's right or not.
I think that sounds right.
Yeah.
Well, this brings us back to kind of bodily digestive.
Yes.
Well, he said it. He really believed that it was dictated to him from a higher power in his sleep, and he would lie awake at night. Lines would come to him, and he said that he had a celestial patroness, which is an amazing phrase, called Urania,
right?
And if he tried to write while awake, he couldn't do it. But when he woke up in the morning, he had 40 lines kind of pre-trimmed down in his head.
Yes, which then needed milking.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yes. And he thought he shared a celestial patroness with Moses. He thought the same muse was speaking to him.
That reminds me of my barber, who this is from a while ago now, but my barber was very, very odd, and I used to actually, in the end, get frightened going in because even you'd have a kind of cutthroat razor near my and say things like, "Do you believe in reincarnation?" He said that I am reincarnated. I believe it. I'm reincarnated from Romulus and Remus. That doesn't. I mean, A, there's no such thing as reincarnation, but B, if there were, you can't be reincarnated from 2 people.
Doesn't make sense. Not who lives at the same time. Maybe one after the other. But
Yeah,
I think you should get a new barber.
Yes, I did in the end. Yeah. There's not much need of one now.
There was a thing that Terry Pratchett used to say, which I think he wrote about it, so I don't necessarily think he believed this, but the idea was that, like with Milton, ideas would come down from the heavens, and they were sort of, particles of ideas, and if they hit the right head, that is who got the idea. And he just said, imagine how many great plays and ideas were lost because the particle hit a brick wall. Or how much did we lose to the missing? It's a lovely idea.
It is.
But that just hate you now. That but Dickens' children talked about how they knew their dad was writing because he'd be up talking. He invented these characters, but he could only really work with them if he sort of became them, and he'd talk to them in the mirror. He'd have a conversation with them in the mirror, sort of improvising in their voices, and then he'd write it down.
Yeah, I saw Bruce Robinson do that, the writer of Withnail and I. Is that have I got his name right? Bruce Robinson, I think. And there was video footage of him sort of writing, and he would do that. He'd be at the keyboard just going, well, now, what are you going to, just being the character as he was writing. And then he gets really drunk while he's writing. And you don't see this in the video, but he talks about how he basically just starts typing with his nose. He gets that drunk, but but his characters are drunk. So it kind of just plays out fine.
It's something going on. I remember I directed a small pilot with Nina Conti. Nina Conti has the foul-mouthed puppet, and the premise was it was a sort of Ally McBeal if Ally McBeal also had a foul-mouthed puppet that spoke on her hand. And she forgot her line in the middle of a take. She forgot her line, and Monkey the puppet reminded her. And then she went, "Oh yeah,
wow,
yeah."
Wow,
and then when
so cool.
we were improvising, Monkey said something that genuinely made her laugh.
Oh my God! That's like when you forget your PIN number and you have to look away and just let your fingers do the dancing.
Kind of,
Wow!
I'm so glad that happens to you as well. I always think maybe I'm going senile, but I can't tell people my PIN number. My hand is the only thing that knows it at this point. It is not sharing.
So when I was in Greece last year, and some of their pads, when you put your PIN number in, they changed the order of the numbers on the pin, so you can't use the pattern anymore. You can only use the thing. And the idea is that it stops like an unscrupulous person looking at the pattern and doing it. But what it actually means is you can't use your card anymore.
And that led to the collapse of the Greece economy.
That's right. Yeah, everyone just forgot their pin numbers.
I've forgotten how to work it. It's been such a long time since I've gone out and used a cash machine because everything is just chipped now. That I think I won't know how. Have you forgotten how to do things? I've forgotten how to drive.
How do you know?
I haven't get in the car and just go. Oh yeah.
Do you think when things open up, there'll just be a load more little bumps in the road and stuff? Because when people are just coming out for the first time in ages, must be right.
Maybe
right. Just people just banging into walls and just forgetting how to turn corners and all sorts.
My husband went to the shop yesterday because I wanted some supplies for tonight.
Yeah.
And it was the first time, because he's very COVID cautious, sensible. So it's the first time he's been to a shop for sort of 6 months. And he went all the way to the shop and then he came back and said, I forgot I had to bring money. Walked into the shop, picked up some stuff, went, wait, how do I pay for this?
Yeah.
So, it's going to take some readjustment.
I think so, yeah. Right.
The first Serbian translation of Paradise Lost. Do you guys know about this?
The first of many. No.
So many. Of the famous trilogy of Serbian translations.
They bring one out every year in Serbia.
They do. It was written on
Christmas. Yeah.
It was written on prison loo roll.
Oh.
So this is one of those amazing stories. It was written by Milovan Djilas, and I have massively mispronounced that. How do you say his name? He was the vice president of Yugoslavia and then imprisoned. Anyway, he was vice president of Yugoslavia, imprisoned in the 60s for revealing state secrets on trumped up charges. And so he was put in prison and he translated Paradise Lost using a tiny pencil, which apparently he hid from the guards inside an orange.
Right.
I don't know more about that. I don't know how often the orange was.
Yes.
That's so good.
But with loo roll in prison being at such a premium, he must have been very unpopular to have commandeered an entire epic poem's worth.
Because actually there was a diary entry where he said, I just finished the 9th chapter of the 3rd part of the 2nd book. So he's not far in, and I'm on page 3126 of toilet paper.
Yeah.
So
wow.
But where did he hide it when the guards came around to check? Where did he hide it? I mean, there must have been masses of loo roll.
I think that's what happened at the start of lockdown, wasn't it? Everyone was writing Paradise Lost.
They're closing the theatres. No, before this.
I don't think he had very good reactions to it in his lifetime. One of the first people to see it was a good friend of his called Thomas Elwood, and Milton recorded. Elwood recorded his reaction of being asked to go around to Milton's house, read Paradise Lost, and then say what he thought. And this is Elwood's words. He asked me how I liked it. I said to him, Thou hast said much here of Paradise Lost, but what hast thou to say of Paradise Found? Which is, I think we can all agree, the most annoying review you can possibly receive. I wasn't writing about Paradise Found. I was specifically sticking to my brief.
And also, he did then write Paradise. I mean, he wrote Paradise Regained.
Yeah. He did the sequel,
The rather disappointing sequel to the original hit. Yeah. So that's like, making Home Alone and saying, what did you think? And then saying, you've said much of Home Alone. But what of Home with Family?
What of Home Alone 2?
We've heard an awful lot. We've heard an awful lot about the death of Stalin, but we've heard nothing about the death of Khrushchev. So annoying.
We've heard the news, but what about the next?
Was that the same guy who told him to start rhyming? There was definitely, and this made me feel good. We think it's quite a modern day sort of
halfway through.
Yeah, exactly.
Start rhyming.
Come on, pick it up. I think maybe it was his publisher who said, "I'm a bit confused. I like the poem. I like where you're going with it, but it doesn't seem to rhyme." And he had to write an introduction, actually, Milton, explaining why he didn't rhyme it and saying he thought good poetry doesn't have to rhyme.
Yeah, nice. Do you remember that thing Bill Bailey did where he got a review after a gig and the reviewer said, there's no punchlines? where are the punchlines? So he went on stage the next night and did an hour of just punchlines. No setups, just the punchlines.
I did the worst gig I ever had to do was I did this thing ages ago, Friday Night Armistice, and it was the election. It was the 1997 election, and there was a whole spate of politicians from different parties doing jokes in their speeches. You know, it was the start of that time where they thought, let's try and be a bit more normal, do jokes. And we thought, to assess how good the jokes were, there were three of us, myself, Peter Bain, and David Schneider, and we each had to go and do a live stand-up gig as ourselves, but just saying the jokes written by politicians in one party. So I had all the conservative jokes. Jokes said, and I was on some live London but I was announced as Armando Iannucci. He's trying out some new material. There was a breath of anticipation, and then deathly silent, and it was horrible. If not for the reactions that we got from the crowd.
Did you get a single laugh, Armando, or
I got
anything? No.
But the camera was, trained on the audience. You just saw people just going. It was horrible, but I mean, worth it in the end when we played it back because you could see just how terrible these jokes were.
Do you remember any of the jokes?
No.
When was it exactly? It was
1997.
Oh, okay.
In the early days of comedy, it was all in black and white.
Do you know that these guys know it, but I'll just mention it to you, Armando, the story of Jimmy Carter when he was in Japan and he was doing a speech. So he was mid doing his speech and it's going really well, and he's having this translator do all the translations as he goes along. And then he gets to a bit in the speech where he realizes, oh God, this is a joke. And he's started his setup. He's like, this is obviously not going to translate, so I'm just going to say some random joke, and this is going to fail. But he has to go for it anyway. Yeah. So he gets it out, and the Japanese translator does the translation, massive laugh. And he's like, what? How the hell did that get a massive laugh? This translator must be incredible. So afterwards, he goes up to him just to say, hey, thanks so much for the job. And that's incredible. How did you manage to translate that joke? I just didn't think it was possible. And he said, oh, well, what I did was after you finished telling it, I just said to the crowd, President Carter just told a joke. Everybody must laugh. I got the big laugh. Genius. Even more genius a move by the translator.
Awesome. Yeah. One fact about diplomacy I discovered when we were researching in Washington for Veep and various places is like Madeleine Albright, who was Bill Clinton's Secretary of State, always had this rule that, never leave the room. If you leave the room in a meeting, an important decision could be made and you haven't been part of it. She taught her staff what she called bladder diplomacy, which was how to attend like an 8-hour-long, this will be good for you, 8-hour-long meeting without having to go to the bathroom.
Right.
Which was just to pretend to be drinking, to be, just to kind of take small sips. She called it bladder diplomacy, and that's probably how she...
Amanda, where were you 17 hours ago when we started this?
I should have messaged that one across, really.
We've all pissed ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're only seeing the heads up, really, isn't it, really? Because,
yeah. Oh, that's so good.
Churchill used to fake drink, didn't he? Sorry, it's quite tangentially related, just politicians pretending to drink. But Churchill, everyone thought he was necking whiskey all the time, but didn't he actually water it down quite a lot?
He did, and Stalin did as well. Stalin used to invite all his Politburo round at about 1 o'clock in the morning for dinner, and then watch a Western, because Stalin was very nocturnal, and he liked to get them drunk. But he instructed his staff just to water his down because he wanted to get them all drunk, because then they would open up and then he could hear really what they were thinking.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
God, you would wake up. When you wake up scared the next day that maybe you said something mean to your friend. Imagine waking up knowing you've insulted Stalin.
Or some of them would go home and their wives would tell them, "What did you say? What did you say?" And they would write it down so that they woke up the next day going, "Oh God, I said this. I better clear that Stalin."
Wow.
And he would also make them dance as well. He would make them dance. He played some music, and he loved sort of westerns. He loves a bit of sort of 1930s music, and he'd make them dance, and they'd all dance. And it's just men. It's all these big burly men. But sometimes, two of them were dancing close to each other. It was their only way of passing on secrets, because it was the only time they'd see each other.
Oh wow!
That's so good.
Do you remember that thing? Yeltsin, when he stayed at the White House, that he got so drunk that he was found by the Secret Service outside in his pants, trying to order a pizza from somewhere.
On the White House lawn, right?
On the White House lawn, yeah. Yeltsin, drunk. So good. I love it. I think Dean Martin also used to not drink as much as we thought. I think he used to have an apple juice to give the suggestion of a brandy or a whiskey on stage, but play up to the slurry character.
God, we've shattered people's illusions about these people. Yeltsin definitely wasn't fake drinking.
Whereas this is Bailey's. This is pure Bailey's.
I think we're going to have to wrap up in a second. Armando, that was so much fun.
Right, how much money have we raised?
What have we got? Let's see.
Let's
check the tally. We are currently on 95,000. We are so close to our target.
Oh,
amazing.
Get us to 100 and Armando will write the next bit of Comedy Genius. Is that we'll do that, right?
He can't do anything wrong. I can even see in the background one of the best comedy books that's been written in recent years, I Partridge, sitting there. The man doesn't know how to write anything shit.
All right, I thought you were referring to the end of Iraq.
One of your lesser-known hits.
But no, thank you so much for coming on. We have raised some lovely amounts of money in the time that you've been here, so really appreciate it. And
you're all doing very well.
Thank you.
Thanks,
and
Armando.
Don't go anywhere. We will be back with our next guest. It is the wonderful Philippa Perry. We'll see you in a sec. Hey everybody, we hope you enjoyed watching that video from our 20-hour-long No Such Thing as a Fish comic relief marathon. There are plenty more videos to watch, but before you watch them, we're going to ask you to donate to the cause that we did this for. Go to the link below and you will be sent to comicrelief.com/fish where you can donate and help change lives. Donate now.